Welcome to the Paul Adefarasin podcast, our interactive 15-minute review of this week's message. We revisit the word, surface the big ideas, and give you space to reflect, pray, and act. If you'd like the full message, though, you can watch it on YouTube or listen on Spotify after this episode. My name is Paul Adefarasin.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a truly fascinating and unique stack of source material today. We have the full transcript from a major religious service, specifically the last Sunday of 2025, December 28th, at House on the Rock. And this isn't just devotional content. When you really analyze it, it functions as a highly strategic blueprint. It's just packed with historical lessons and some really powerful prophetic declarations for the year ahead.
You know, that's a really profound observation. Our mission here really is to act as your guides, to sort of navigate this specific liturgy, this sermon, and pull out those key nuggets of knowledge for you. We've basically synthesized the entire service into 3 interconnected themes that really define their strategic vision.
So tell us what those themes are, because for you, the listener, this is kind of the shortcut to understanding the whole structure of their commitment.
Okay, so first we have what we're calling the David Blueprint. It's this intense, almost obsessive commitment required for divine proximity. It's all about process.
Process and intentionality.
Exactly. Second, the strategic meaning of worship, and this is key not as a passive activity, but as a mechanism for actual governance.
Okay.
And third, a very clear, very actionable mandate for global influence and radical financial stewardship that they've slated for 2026.
You know, I found the emotional whiplash in just the opening moments totally captivating. You have this intense Thanksgiving. People are just so grateful for being kept through the fire, the flood, the mountains of 2025. And then, without even a breath, that gratitude for survival is immediately followed by these audacious declarations for 2026. Increase, promotion, establishment, freedom. It's like a statement that says, we survived, now we conquer.
That dichotomy is the energetic engine of the whole message. It acknowledges just how severe the past year was while pivoting so sharply into expectation. And the audience they're addressing, it mirrors this global ambition. They are clearly connecting with members all over the world, UK, Canada, Malawi, Somaliland, the US, and they have this great internal term for members who are returning home for the holidays.
The IGGBs. I loved that.
Yes, I just got backs. It's an immediate, fun acknowledgement of their vast diasporic reach. It signals that this mandate isn't local at all. It's intrinsically global from the jump.
Okay, let's jump into that foundational lesson then, the David Blueprint. It really anchors their whole view of commitment. We're talking about the deep dive into 2 Samuel 6, right? David trying to bring the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem. What was the core lesson he just failed to grasp at first?
So the initial attempt illustrates one of the most critical insights from this whole deep dive. Methodology matters more than good intentions when you're pursuing these sacred goals. David's first attempt was, it was a transport disaster. The ark was placed on a cart, pulled by oxen, not carried by the Levites as it was supposed to be.
Right. And the moment the oxen stumbled, Uzzah, who is a Levite, he reaches out to steady the ark.
And he's instantly struck down. And what the source material really emphasizes is that Uzzah's act, while maybe well-meaning, was considered presumed against the glory of God. It wasn't a failure of love for God. It was a failure to respect the specific necessary process. David was basically trying to modernize transport, and the price was immediate and profound fear.
So David stops the whole operation. He's displeased, he's afraid, and that leads to this crucial 3-month pause where the ark just sits at the house of Obed-Edom.
Yeah.
What was the immediate kind of unexpected consequence of that delay?
Well, the unplanned consequence, and this is the amazing part, is that the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household.
The whole household.
The entire household. And this accident, this blessing, it proved to David that God's presence was potent and desirable, but that he had to figure out the right way to carry it. That blessing was the catalyst he needed to go back to the source material, the law, and figure out the correct process.
That's the key pivot then. David realized he had to align his method with the divine instruction. According to the chronicler's version they cite in the source, what did David finally understand about properly handling the ark?
That the Levites had to carry it on their shoulders, using these specialized staves. And even more, the priests carrying it had to be of the exact same height and gait.
Why? What was the reason for that?
So the ark wouldn't wobble, and critically, so no one would be tempted to touch it directly. It just required this meticulous, totally intentional coordination.
That focus on methodology is so powerful. But this is where the story shifts from just instruction to the Davidic definition of sacrifice. Let's talk about that second attempt to move the ark. What was the level of commitment David demonstrated?
It was almost unprecedented. I mean, the journey from Obed-Edom's house to the city of David was estimated to be about 13 to 14 kilometers.
That's a long way to carry something that sacred and, frankly, that dangerous.
It is. And the source transcript meticulously calculated something that really brings this dedication to life. David sacrificed oxen and rams every 6 paces.
Every 6 paces. That detail just blew me away.
If you put that into math, you've got roughly 14,000 meters to cover. If he's sacrificing every 6 paces, which is about every 5 meters or so, that means there were approximately 2,500 individual intentional pauses for solemn sacrifice just to complete the transport.
Wait, 2,500 pauses. That's not devotion. That's bordering on obsession.
Yeah.
What does that kind of methodical, relentless intentionality tell us about achieving success in any field, not just in the spiritual context?
It tells us that David understood that the proximity he wanted, the presence, it came at the price of constant intentional investment. It wasn't a quick sprint. It was this highly disciplined, systematic crawl toward the goal. Every 6 paces, he was demonstrating that he valued the presence more than the speed or the cost. And that level of dedication is exactly what defined his reign and established his unique standard of worship.
And that intense commitment, it moves us perfectly to our second theme. Moving from that personal proximity secured through methodical sacrifice to structural governance. The core concept here is the rebuilding of the Tabernacle of David.
This concept is crucial because it connects David's personal commitment to a global prophetic destiny. It's sourced from Amos 9, and then it's repeated in the New Testament. And the rebuilding of this tabernacle is linked to a massive ingathering, the inclusion of all people, the Gentiles, and an absolute explosion of prophetic blessing.
The source quotes that beautiful image. Things happening so rapidly that the listener's head will swim, and the plowman shall overtake the reaper. The pace of progress just accelerates beyond the normal limits of time.
Precisely. And the physical structure of David's tabernacle, it actually informs the theology of that blessing. Unlike Moses' tabernacle or Solomon's temple, David's structure had no veil separating the Holy of Holies.
Okay, so the absence of the veil is the big structural distinction. What does that signify?
It's interpreted as a prophetic forecast of the new covenant, that God desires intimate, unmediated involvement with his people. He doesn't want religious barriers or mediators or complex rituals standing in the way of relationship. The emphasis is all on open access.
That structural difference, the no-veil approach, that naturally leads us to this fascinating linguistic deep dive on the nature of worship itself, moving it from just a song to a governing principle.
Yes. The word translated as inhabiteth the praises in Psalm 22 is the Hebrew word yashab, and the source really highlights just how deep this one is.
Okay, let's break that down sequentially. What is the first profound meaning of yashab that they present?
So first, yashab means to sit, specifically in an authoritative posture, like a judge or a king on a throne.
And when a judge sits, he is enforcing the rule of law.
Exactly. So when God yashabs in our praise, he isn't just visiting or enjoying the song. He is sitting down and enforcing his kingdom's rule, his governance in that place, in that life. The praise literally becomes a throne upon which his authority is exercised. It's not about begging for a blessing. It's about inviting the blesser to be in charge.
That just fundamentally changes how you view worship. And the second meaning of yeshab takes it even further into the realm of ultimate commitment.
It really does. Yeshab also means to marry. This implies an eternal, unwavering commitment. So worship, in this view, is an act that invites God's judicial governance and his unwavering marital commitment into your life. It solidifies the relationship.
So if worship is governance, it has to have a practical application, right? Especially in stressful situations. The source connects this directly to warfare through that dramatic story of Paul and Silas in the deep dungeon.
They were severely beaten in the deepest, most unsanitary part of the prison, described as being in urine and feces. Yet at midnight, they made a deliberate choice to sing. They chose praise as a sacrifice, not a feeling that just, came out of their circumstances.
That's an extreme psychological choice. They looked at their situation and decided to activate their authority. And their action triggers a seismic event. The earthquake didn't just break their chains.
No, it broke the chains of every single prisoner in the jail, which led to a profound system-level change, the jailer's conversion and the start of the Philippian church. The core takeaway from that anecdote is really clear. My worship is my weapon of warfare. This is the authority needed to facilitate that kingdom expansion we talked about.
Speaking of expansion, let's transition into our third segment, the very practical, very material mandate for 2026. This starts with foundational identity.
The source material is so clear on this. Every person is born on purpose for this specific time. You're not a relational accident. You are designed to be a problem solver and an instrument for God's purpose in society. And that purpose requires resource.
And here comes the financial command, which is tied directly to establishing that purpose. The instruction is to utilize the wealth of the wicked stored up for the righteous. But not for personal consumption, right? So it's for establishing God's covenant. It's a resource transfer for a mission.
And this raises a fascinating and highly practical point about stewardship. The source was so specific about handling sudden, massive wealth. There's a bold prophecy that someone present would receive $1 million, which is approximately 1.5 billion naira.
Wow. And the counsel that followed was striking, so relevant for anyone who gets a sudden windfall. What was the instruction?
The recipient was explicitly instructed to hide that money for a minimum of 6 months. Not to invest it, not to spend it, but to learn competent stewardship, to learn to control the money rather than being driven by it. The purpose of that pause is to separate the acquisition of wealth from the mastery of it. You have to grow into that capacity.
So that 6-month pause is a period of internal governance before you do any external deployment. And this wealth is meant to serve a broader goal, which they articulate in their infrastructure vision.
Absolutely. The ultimate goal for the church is to become lenders, not borrowers, not just for their own operations, but to facilitate critical infrastructure schools, energy, transport. They want to create a redistributive system globally. The material wealth is intended to change national landscapes.
And that financial strategy directly funds this hugely ambitious global expansion vision. They're aiming to use these cultural high excellence events to spread their vision far beyond just local Nigerian services.
They framed the UK expansion as their current Goliath, and the plan is audacious, organizing the Experience event in major UK venues. They're starting with the Royal Albert Hall, then moving to the much larger O2 Arena.
And the logistics are staggering. It signals a really deep strategic understanding of marketing and influence.
Oh, yes. The goal is to raise significant funding, £500,000 plus, and strategically partner with major corporate brands like auto companies and airlines to provide social proof.
Sure.
This isn't just a church service abroad. It's designed to be a highly visible cultural phenomenon. The aim is an anointed invasion to call nations like the UK back to faith. It's an apostolic task, really, rooted in that same methodical, intentional Davidic framework.
So if we synthesize everything we've covered, the proximity, the governance, the mandate, what is the central message for you, the learner?
The synthesis is that extraordinary intentionality seen in David's methodical 2,500 pause sacrifice and in Paul's unwavering worship, it leads directly to the highest form of divine governance. When God sits on the throne of your praise, that governance unlocks massive prophetic blessing and the material resources you need for this global redemptive mandate. Process validates purpose.
That is a phenomenal deep dive into what is clearly a strategic organizational blueprint, just disguised as a Sunday service. But before we close, the source material had a critical final instruction about relationships and warfare that I think is essential for anyone trying to operate with this level of purpose. It deals with boundaries.
Yes, the distinction between forgiveness and trust, it's absolutely crucial for those taking on this demanding Davidic mantle. You have to maintain your focus.
The warning was incredibly clear and pragmatic. Forgiveness does not mean you forget, and forgiveness does not mean things are going to go back to how they were.
The counsel was that true love and strategic operational safety, they require you to maintain peace without proximity if change hasn't occurred. Because, as they say, bitter and sweet water can't come out of the same mouth. For those operating in this high governance sphere, the choice to move past bitterness, choosing intercession over accusation, is just necessary boundary maintenance.
That makes perfect sense. The lesson of this entire deep dive, whether you apply it to faith, to business, or just your professional life, seems to be that intentionality and commitment define your capacity for success. You have to know your value, pursue the goal methodically, even when it demands sacrifice every 6 paces, and you have to protect your boundaries to maintain the governance you've established.
Indeed. The final provocative thought for you, the learner, is to consider this. When you hit a point of immense pressure, your own personal deep dungeon is your default response complaint and analysis. Or is it radical sacrificial praise that invites decisive governance? What is the price you're willing to pay to ensure your proximity to your purpose remains unbroken?
Something powerful to mull over as we close out 2025 and look toward 2026. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. To go deeper, watch the full message on YouTube or listen to the full-length sermon on Spotify. Follow the podcast, and please share it with someone who needs it and leave your response in the Q&A. Kindly keep your heart on fire, your eyes on Jesus, knowing you are the exception. Grace and peace. We love you deeply.